Greetings, terrestrials. Greetings and welcome. Welcome to Strange Times Indeed with Cliff McCallister. I, of course, am Cliff McCallister, your host and the czar of the bizarre. Now, every week here on Strange Times Indeed, we take your calls to hear if you've experienced anything strange or unexplained, and we might get to that tonight. But it's hard to say for sure because this week is part 2 of our 4-part bi-weekly series, Who Killed Marilyn? We've been examining this text here, putting together evidence, gathering clues to see who killed Marilyn Monroe. It's our dip into true crime here on Strange Times Indeed. And this week we're going to be talking about chapters 3 and 4 of Who Killed Marilyn. Now, before we get to that, some breaking news off the top. Some very important news coming in from the world around us. First and foremost, a follow-up to our breaking news story at the top of part 1 of Who Killed Marilyn. When we explored chapters 1 and 2, we also had a breaking story off the top of that evidence of life had been found on Venus in the form of phosphine gases. Now, here's an interesting thing. This was brand new news 2 weeks ago. But just recently, just today, it has been uncovered that NASA found similar evidence of this in 1978 and conveniently forgot about it. Why did it take them over 40 years to deliver this kind of information to the public? Why is NASA hiding life on Venus? What do they stand to gain from it, and why take 40 years for this information to reach us now? It seems to me, I would have to guess, that by now, NASA and other government entities have likely made first contact with the Venusians. But we've got to trickle this news out in a way that it's not going to be too jarring for people, especially in the year 2020. So they're just going to tell us about the phosphine gases for now. They won't tell us about the deals that they've made with this extraterrestrial race. So an interesting update there. If you have a theory as to why NASA has done this, why they are hiding this contact, go ahead and put that in the chat. We're always game to talk about that. Now, this other news, underground lakes on Mars. NASA has been working very hard trying to find any evidence of life on Mars, and just recently have seemed to discovered underground lakes. There's evidence of active water on Mars, but currently it is underneath a mile-thick sheet of ice where this water has formed and maintains a liquid state. Could there be underground civilizations on Mars? Is the reason we have not made contact because the outer layer of their planet has grown so uninhabitable that they have burrowed down a mile into the Earth, where they have found safety, where they have found renewable resources, where these Martians have been able to exist peacefully in that time? No need to come up to the surface level? Now, the next story, and the final top story of our show tonight before we get into Who Killed Marilyn, discount Ouija boards causing trouble in the UK. There has been an outcry over these discount dollar stores selling spirit boards, selling Ouija boards. They are called spirit boards, and they're going for €1. Now, I believe the update, hydro energy under the Martian crust. We will get to those. We will get to those comments about the last story after we talk about these Ouija boards. They're being sold for $1 over in the UK. €1. Now, this is a price far too cheap for a quality Ouija board. The concern is that things this cheap, that people might be gathering them up and summoning entities that they don't have power to. And I tell you what, it's not because they're cheap. It's not because they cost so little that anyone can do them. It's because that these are made out of cheap materials. These are cheaply made Ouija boards, and you don't want to mess with one of those. Well-made Ouija boards, especially Ouija boards made out of a fine wood, out of mahogany, out of any sort of tree. Those are infused in the craft of making them, the abilities to prevent higher demons from reaching through the Ouija board and into our own universe. But if you're using one of these cheaply made dollar cardboard Ouija boards, those protections aren't going to be in there. Any beast from another dimension can rip through cardboard. You're not only dealing with spirits, you're dealing with entities that have proven they're capable of moving a planchette across the board. And if your board is not sturdy, if it is made cheaply, if it could be sold for €1, the odds of opening an interdimensional rift, the odds of a creature using a cheap Ouija board to breach into our own world in ways beyond moving a planchette, the odds of that are too great to count. So we cannot actively give anybody advice on this show to purchase a Ouija board that cheap. Anything terrible could happen, and you get a classic Parker Brothers Hasbro Ouija board. Now that should hold up. Those things are made to make the minimum spiritual requirements. But anything more, anything cheaper than that, you're gonna cause an interdimensional spiritual rift. Now here we go. We're looking in the comments here. We just should weigh a pound, not cost a pound. LOL. That's very true. CT Schultze. I will give you 1 gyro for 1 soul board. €1, €1 for 1 soul board. Oh, a soul board like that probably made too much. Probably £1 in the UK. Oh, perhaps a pound. Yes, a pound or a euro. We don't deal with exchange rates here on Strange Time. It's indeed. Now, looking back, comments about this story about 3 lakes found on Mars, tracking back. A clever comment from Barefoot52 says, Mars maids, a clever play on mermaids. CT Schultze chimes in, hydro energy under the Martian crust. That's very possible. Some do believe that these 3 lakes, though it has not been confirmed yet, may very well be connected. And if they can get turbines going under there, they can have a renewable energy source as this liquid water moves a mile under the Martian crust. So it is very possible that is exactly what is going on there. Now, if you are just tuning in, this is Strange Times Indeed with Cliff McCallister. I, of course, am Cliff McCallister, the czar of the bizarre. Every week we take calls on the strange and the unexplained, but this week we're shifting gears into the world of true crime for part 2 of our 4-part bi-weekly series, Who Killed Marilyn? Now, if you didn't watch part 1, don't worry. We're about to do a quick recap. Now, a content warning for those of you watching the show tonight. The Who Killed Marilyn series is a series fraught with discussions about murder, with discussions of suicide. If those are things that are unpleasant, if those trigger bad thoughts in your head, go ahead and skip these episodes. Next week, we'll be back with our normal strangeness. But if that might be troubling to you, go ahead and skip the Who Killed Marilyn episodes. I won't hold it against you for taking care of your own mental health. Now, a recap from the first episode, a brief recap. It seemed very certain at the end of last week's episode that Marilyn Monroe was... What was that? Oh, sorry, I thought I heard our technical director talking to me. Anyway, that's okay. Next, what we were talking about 2 weeks ago, Who Killed Marilyn Part 1. It seemed very clear at the end of that episode that Marilyn had in fact been murdered in the night. There's no doubt about it. The conflicting evidence doesn't tie the people who were involved in the last moments of her life, the people who confirmed her death, their stories are changing. The hours with which they arrive at their house shift. There's a 4-hour gap in which the CIA is clearly in her home, removing any evidence that she was with JFK or Bobby Kennedy at any point. At least that is one of the many things that could have happened during that 4-hour span. But we've got a list of people who we believe at the end of that episode are key list of suspects for who might have killed Marilyn Monroe. Now, the obvious one, the Kennedy family. The others, Joe Dimaggio, ex-husband Arthur Miller, the family of Johnny Hyde, and extraterrestrials. Yes, it might not seem pertinent right away that Marilyn was an extraterrestrial, but this book itself claims that she was a cosmic woman with a psychic musk, and these double entendres about her extraterrestrial roots don't end in the first 2 chapters. We'll get to that later on in the programming. Now, chapters 3 and 4 of Who Killed Marilyn These primarily concern her relationship to the Kennedys. Now, what we are looking at here is really a full in-depth look at the subtitle of the book. Who killed Marilyn? And did the Kennedys know? Well, did the Kennedys know? We start to examine that a little bit in chapters 3 and 4. Not directly, mind you. No, in chapters 3 and 4 of this book, Marilyn is still with us, and she is having illicit affairs with members of the Kennedy clan. The first, Jack Kennedy. The second, Bobby Kennedy. Now let's recap. Let's talk a little bit about these relationships so we can know what makes them so important. Now, of course, Jack Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, as some called him in textbooks and such, had an illicit affair with Marilyn Monroe. But what makes this so important is that he, at the time, was the president of the United States. That's right, we're talking about John F. Kennedy, a man who was murdered at a parade. Many murders across this book, so let's keep an eye on that, because we're going to get back to that too. The untimely fate of JFK. Now, his relationship to Marilyn Monroe, they are secret lovers. Now, here's the thing. John F. Kennedy is the first Kennedy that Marilyn would become entangled with. And perhaps the man that she set her sights on the day she divorced Arthur Miller. And let's take a look in the book here. There's just a little part. It tells you she's sitting there at an airport the day she divorces Arthur Miller. And she looks up, and it's the day of John F. Kennedy's inauguration. He becomes president the same day that Marilyn Monroe divorces Arthur Miller. Now, some might think that's a coincidence. Some might think it's a way to draw press attention away from her divorce and towards the new president. I mean, who would talk about a celebrity divorce the day that John F. Kennedy, the hottest president we've ever had, is sworn into office? Well, what press agent couldn't connect the dots between a Hollywood sex symbol getting a divorce and a sexy president ascending to power? Why, the two ought to have been magnetized together. These are two directly related stories. Now, here's the thing. Marilyn makes her way to JFK because she's got connections. She knows people in the biz who know the Kennedys. And one of those people in the biz, a man by the name of Frank Sinatra. Now, Frank Sinatra, not a man who doesn't have mafia ties, but a man who does have ties to Marilyn Monroe and the Kennedys. And she uses her connections, her affair with Frank Sinatra. Like, let's not kid ourselves. We know they both got it on from time to time. But Frank Sinatra and Marilyn Monroe, she cuddles up next to him and he cuddles up next to the Kennedys. And eventually, she gives old Sinatra the slip. And it's just her and Jackie Boy. Now, Marilyn has a tumultuous relationship with John F. Kennedy. She's not particularly that interested in him. In fact, early on in her relationship, after their first night together, a friend asks her, she's in conversation with a friend, and she is describing her night with this president, and she says to him, he may be a good president, but he doesn't grab me sexually. Now, this eventually evolves, but this was her first impression upon spending a night with John F. Kennedy. Not that impressed, kind of over it at the start. Now, later, her opinions change. She gets to find herself to be a little more into JFK, and she later describes him to a friend after a few more sessions of lovemaking. She says that in the bedroom, JFK is very democratic and very penetrating. Now, take that for what you will, but I think it's a little saucy. Hotter than Harry S. Truman? Quite possibly. Jackie was the wife. Did Marilyn have an affair with her too? No, it does not seem that Jackie was involved, and we will get to that later on in the night. It does not seem that she was involved with Marilyn directly. But could she have been involved in the murder? Well, we're not ruling her out as a suspect. I say Jackie Onassis hasn't suffered enough, so we might as well put her through the ringer here as well. Now, this is a further example of how Marilyn Monroe flaunted her sexual prowess against the President of the United States. The way she used him as a stepping stone to get close to power. And I mean, how much closer could you get than sleeping with the President of the United States? And this comes straight from the book. Here we go. We are reading directly from Who Killed Marilyn. This is Chapter 3, a saucy story about Marilyn Monroe and the way she disregarded the president she slept with, but still maintained complete control over him. Columnist Earl Wilson printed a story told to him by an intimate of the president, one of Kennedy's beards. Now, in those circles, a beard is a man who publicly escorts a woman, pretending she is his date, in order to hide the fact that she is actually dating someone else who must be kept a secret. Now, he was asked to pick up Marilyn at her New York apartment and escort her to a special dinner party arranged by Kennedy at the Carlisle Hotel in New York. The dinner was scheduled for 9 p.m. The beard arrived at her apartment at 8:45 and found a nude Marilyn sitting in the bedroom, half asleep, staring at herself in the mirror. "Get dressed!" he screamed at her. "We've got a date with the President of the United States!" "I don't know what to wear," Marilyn mumbled. He told Wilson he pulled a dress out of her closet and practically threw it at her. But Marilyn told him she wanted to wear a disguise, so anybody seeing me going to meet President Kennedy won't know I'm Marilyn Monroe. He begged her to hurry. He was getting a little worried, and he was furious that it didn't seem to mean anything to her that she was keeping the president waiting. Marilyn decided she would go as a brunette. While she was searching through her wig collection for a suitable black wig, a phone call came from the party demanding, "Where the hell is Marilyn?" Marilyn tried on 3 different wigs and 4 dresses and was finally dressed and ready to go about an hour and a half later. But by now, near panic, Marilyn's escort told her, "I swear this is the last time. This is too much. Jack will kill me." 5 minutes after I'm there," Marilyn assured him. "They'll forget I was late." The president was furious when they arrived. "I can't believe this really happened. You ruined the whole dinner party. The food's spoiled. Everything's cold." "I'm not," Marilyn cooed. The escort and presidential intimate told Wilson that Kennedy pouted for about 2 or 3 minutes. Then, he said, the president looked down at her beautiful ass in that white dress and didn't have that beautiful white dress that didn't have anything under it, and he melted. 5 minutes later, everybody had forgotten that she'd been late, including the President of the United States. Now, she wields that power like a knife, that sexual power, to control the President of the United States, to get close to him, to gain information, perhaps. And yet, at the same time, this man, this beard, who's on a date with Marilyn Monroe, terrified that the President of the United States will kill him? Well, if he's going to kill the beard, would he not stop to kill Marilyn Monroe? What could John F. Kennedy have been doing if this is a man who has killed before? There's no other reason to be afraid of being murdered unless the person who you're afraid is murdering you has killed before. And that's what clearly this beard was afraid of. Now, in addition to this embarrassment, potential motive of the early emasculation of the president. Now, eventually, John F. Kennedy, he starts to move towards his second term. He starts to think about re-election, and he starts to think, gee, maybe I shouldn't be having an affair with Marilyn Monroe. Now, this is, of course, after the big birthday party. Well, we're going to put a pin in that. We'll get to the birthday party soon. But he starts to think to himself, gee, I can't have this going on. This is easy money for anyone who might be going up against me in the election. So I've got to dump this broad. I got to get out of here. So he starts to lean back on Marilyn a little bit. He starts to ease off some. But that's okay. That doesn't bother him. Because you see, he has this birthday party. And at this birthday party, Marilyn meets a young man by the name of Bobby Kennedy. Now, after this birthday party, Marilyn Monroe, she goes up on stage, Madison Square Garden, in front of the world, sings happy birthday in the most sexual way imaginable to the President of the United States. And believe me, they celebrated that birthday later. They celebrated it right afterwards. They go back to his place, and oh, hot dog, do they have a good time. And you know how this is clearly what happened. I mean, who could forget Jackie Onassis, Jackie Kennedy, was not at the birthday party. She was not there at Madison Square Garden. John F. Kennedy went stag that night. And let me tell you, Jackie was not happy about it. She had something to say about it and understandably wasn't impressed by Marilyn's performance at Madison Square Garden. She certainly wasn't as impressed as her husband, and some reports have it that she threatened to file for divorce and cause an enormous scandal should he continue his affair with Marilyn Monroe. But you know who else was at that birthday party? A young Bobby Kennedy. And Marilyn gets her sights on him, and she's all hopped up from spending some time with John. Well, why not add another Kennedy to the list? So she starts putting the moves on him right away. And before the end of the night, these two have snuck out to the car together to have a little, you know what I'm saying? So Bobby, the younger and more sexually exciting, stepped in. And Marilyn didn't seem to mind settling for Kennedy brother number 2. Now, this may have been the biggest mistake of Marilyn's life. As far as I can tell, reading through this book, it does seem as the author may be casting Bobby Kennedy as prime suspect number 1. Now, we're not all the way through the other evidence in the book, but we are going to talk about Bobby right now because this is a pretty big one. Now, Bobby Kennedy, he meets Marilyn that night, and they start having an illicit affair. She starts spending less time with Jack, more time with Bobby. And after all, Jack's trying to back off because he doesn't want a scandal. He doesn't want Jackie Onassis leaving him. So she starts to get close to Bobby. And here's where trouble starts to begin for her. Now her friend, Joe Dimaggio, says that Bobby he's a troublesome man. We're going to talk about Joe Dimaggio later because, to make no mistake, he is a suspect. We're not ruling Joe Dimaggio out. But let's get right into it now. Marilyn, she's having this affair with Bobby Kennedy, and she gets in touch with her friend. This is months into the affair. And she calls him from a payphone. She says, I've got to meet you at the beach. I need you to come to the beach and meet me. I'm calling you from a payphone. I wouldn't dare call you on my real phone because her phone at this time had been tapped. People were listening to her conversations. Powerful people, important people. Now, what or why? Well, we're not entirely sure yet, but this next part might give us a bit of a clue. After all, she is sleeping with Bobby Kennedy. Now, she meets her friend, Bob Slatzer, on the beach, and she hands him her diary. But actually, this is less like a diary and more a log of highlights of her recent activities, specifically her activities with Bobby Kennedy. Not intimate details of their romance, and this is from the book, not intimate details of their romance, which Marilyn had confided to Slatzer in the past, but Bobby's thoughts on politics and the criminal activities of men in whom he was interested as Attorney General. She said she began to keep a record because, and to quote, Bobby liked to talk about political things. He got mad at me one day because he said I didn't remember anything he told me. So I decided to make a few notes about our conversations just so I could study them before the next time I saw him. So she's studying these conversations. She's keeping notes of important things that Bobby Kennedy has talked to her about, political things. Perhaps confidential things. There's a line in there that reads about Murder, Inc. And when Slatzer asks her about it, she says she doesn't really understand what it was, but she remembers that Bobby told her that he was so powerful that he could have people taken care of if they got in his way. Now, typically, that is coded language for murder. Seems a pretty clear cut. Perhaps not a threat on his part, but absolutely 100%. Bobby Kennedy just casually letting Marilyn Monroe, he could have people killed. And more pressing and perhaps very confidential information from this book is information regarding the Bay of Pigs. Now, Marilyn Monroe explained, she said, Bobby told me that Jack let him handle that whole thing. He said Bobby Kennedy ran the country that day because Jack had taken medication for his back and wasn't feeling well. Of course, John F. Kennedy had a bad back. He had some back troubles. And Marilyn Monroe actually consulted with her own masseuse to get back rubbing advice that then she would then perform on John F. Kennedy. Now, that's some scintillating information from Who Killed Marilyn. You got to read the whole thing, or if you follow me on Instagram at Strange Times Indeed, I've been reading each chapter so folks can do the research on their own as well if they can't get a copy of the book. You can hear the whole thing there, all the dirty details that I don't share on the show because it's not relevant to who killed her. But there is some sexy stuff. I'll just let you know. There you go. There's the information right on screen. And then in the second Twitter one, that's actually wrong, Stephen. It's the bottom one. I typed it in wrong the first time, and then I just sent in the other one without any explanation. So that's a communication error on my part. Anyway, Marilyn is having this beachside conversation, talking about this secret information, sharing that with her friend, and it's because she knows her phone is tapped. A man named Bernard Spindle gets arrested for illegal wiretapping. This is after Marilyn has been murdered. But part of the reason that he tries to get these tapes back, one of the things when the FBI raids his apartment, they take all his tapes. His lawyer, the DA, makes an appeal to get these tapes back because as the tapes indicated Marilyn was murdered and that somehow Bobby Kennedy was involved. So they're trying to get this information back because it is pertinent to reasonings that may have led to her murder. Well, let's see here. Now, at the end, Marilyn Monroe, she's in this relationship with Bobby Kennedy. She is making love to him. But Bobby Kennedy starts to realize, well, hey, I've got a wife and a kid too. And now I've got this woman, this beautiful woman who I've just been telling things to. I've just been telling high-ranking government secrets about my life, about my relationship with my brother, the President of the United States, and could be trouble for me. So Bobby Kennedy starts to back off. He starts to ghost her. He gives Marilyn the ghost. He stops talking to her. And she's desperately trying to get in touch with him. And at a certain point, it's not even for love anymore. Now, Marilyn denied her affair with Bobby Kennedy till the day she died. Now, perhaps it was a me doth protest too much kind of situation. As she's always saying, I slept with Jack Kennedy, not Bobby. But everyone who knew her said clearly she was just trying to hide that. They weren't buying that one. And she manipulates her way to all this information. Bobby starts to give her the ghost. And she tries to get back in touch with him, and she starts threatening a press conference. She says, if Bobby won't talk to me, then I'll talk to the press. And that's where we get a little motive for Bobby. But Bobby can't have her having a press conference talking about all these things. So Bobby, perhaps, calls for her murder. We'll see. Now, we haven't even reached the murder yet, but that's a bit of the cliffhanger the book leaves us on. Now, that's specifically the way these two chapters 3 and 4, focus on the Kennedys. But that doesn't mean there's not information. That doesn't mean there's not information in these 3 chapters that point to reasons why Arthur Miller, Joe Dimaggio, the family of Johnny Hyde, or extraterrestrials couldn't be indicted for the murder of Marilyn Monroe. So we will be returning after a quick break. We're going to discuss these other theories as to who could have been responsible for the murder and why. And we'll be talking to our own Stephen Craig, our technical director here. He's got his own theory about who killed Marilyn, and he'll be sharing that with us right after the break. So, Stephen, let's roll that. welcome back to Strange Times Indeed with Cliff McCallister. I, of course, am your host, Cliff McCallister. Tonight on the show, Who Killed Marilyn? Look at that, a new follower tonight. Look at that. Now, that brings us, TK.
Thanks, TK. Woohoo!
Thank you so much for following. Now, this brings us to 101 followers here on twitch.tv/MetComedyNight, and we've got a new subscriber. That's Stephen Craig.
Well, that's
Stephen
me.
Craig, I think that's you.
I just celebrate my 2-month anniversary of subscribing. Yeah.
Whoa, congratulations. Thank you so much for following us, Stephen, of course.
You're the bomb,
Always
Cliff.
good when people take an interest in the groups that they are associated with. Now, we've got 101 followers here on twitch.tv/MetComedyNight, and we've got plenty of shows for those 101 people. Now, for the 4 of you that are watching, you're my favorite. You're my favorite 4 of the 101. And tell your friends about this show, please. Let's get the number up. Back to double digits. We hit double digits a while ago. Now, we've got other shows here on Met Comedy Night. Friday night, 9 o'clock. Be sure to tune in for the Comedy Picks. They're going to be doing their signature short-form improv right here at the Maryland Ensemble Theater. And we are this show dedicated to the Maryland Ensemble Theater. They're the only people who have the guts to put us on the air. You can support them by going to marylandensemble.org/donate. They've got a new thing going on right now. The first part of their a season of surprises. Its victory is within our grasp of a 4-part bi-weekly series. Oh, kind of like our own here. Who Killed Marilyn? A 4-part bi-weekly series, much like ours, about women. And women's suffrage specifically. That's a 4-part series. Each episode is $6. And you can go to marylandensemble.org/victory to go ahead and purchase each chapter of that. Support your local theater, especially in these hard times when they can't put on traditional shows. And have to resort to doing things like this. Giving people like me a platform. Now, people like me, Cliff McCallister, I've got my own personalities. I live out in the world just like the rest of you, and you can hear my thoughts every day of the week by following me at Strange Times Indeed on Instagram or Strange T Indeed on Twitter. I like to give people a special good morning message and a good night message. It's a lot of fun, so you can follow me there. And if you've ever got a tip for the show, perhaps you have new information about Who Killed Marilyn, you've got to get to us. You can send us an email at strangetipsindeed@gmail.com. Again, that's strangetipsindeed@gmail.com. That's our tip line. You can send tips any day of the week. You don't just have to call in. It's always nice when you do. And if you've got theories about Who Killed Marilyn, you're welcome to call in. Stephen Craig, our own technical director, just like we were saying, he's got his own theory. So let's bring him on now. Stephen, you've got a theory about who you think killed Marilyn.
That's right, Cliff. I do have a theory. I realized that this person, probably when that book was written, wasn't really well known, and therefore the author of the book didn't have this person in mind as a potential suspect. But as soon as I thought about it, I looked up some stuff real quick, and then I feel like I've begun to affirm my own beliefs before just randomly name calling.
Sure.
But it does seem like more than just a coincidence, at least to me, when it comes to, Who Killed Marilyn. And the suspect that I have in mind would be Carol Baskin. I know it sounds far-fetched, but do you know Carol Baskin?
She said
she was on the Tiger King documentary, and from that documentary, people have speculated as to whether she may have killed her husband. Now, this is
a confirmed killer.
Not confirmed by the law, but I think there is some public opinion surrounding the fact that she killed her husband, and particularly she may have killed her husband because her husband wanted to breed tigers, and she thought that they shouldn't be breeded, needed to build the sanctuary. Well, I want to let you know, Marilyn Monroe actually has a song that's that the entire subject of said song is a tiger.
And so you think this might be a clue, perhaps?
Yeah, and
She was trying to warn people about this Carol Baskin.
well, I specifically think that "Teach Me Tiger,"
Mm.
the lyrics seem very much like there's a sexual relationship between Marilyn Monroe and perhaps one of Carol Baskin's tigers.
Oh my!
And
You think the tiger might have done it? You think this could be a
well,
Siegfried and Roy situation?
I know that that apparently I'll sick the tigers on you. It could have been something she had said to her deceased husband, from watching the documentary or from some of the talks that I've heard after the documentary. But really, what I think could be is, it seems like Marilyn Monroe could be singing in such a way that you would be mistreating said animal, and therefore could have offended Carol Baskin, and then Carol could have easily been offended, and really she does have access to pop stars. Being a tiger person, I mean, she has so many photos online with Britney Spears about a time where Britney was even performing with her tigers. So I don't think it's difficult to speculate that that
Now we're getting a comment in the chat, Stephen. This chat here says she was born in 1961. I believe this is in reference to Carol Baskin. Was born in 1961, so she was only one when Marilyn Monroe died.
Well, I don't know that you could be certain on the date of death, or the date of birth with all the
I think
lies
they're pretty certain about when
surrounding the
the day
conspiracy.
that Marilyn Monroe died.
Wow.
But I'm not saying that discredits your theory. I mean, this is a woman who has a deep connection to tigers, it sounds like. Perhaps
Well,
an inherent psychic connection.
I mean, I could play the audio of the song if you wanted me to, but really it seems to me,
I worry about playing the audio because I do not want the estate of Maryland to contact our show in a way that has financial repercussions. But
well, it's the lyric goes,
you think you could croon a bit for us?
"Teach me, tiger, how to kiss you," and then it's like a bit of a growl, like, "Oh, wah, 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 wah," like a moan sex tiger deep growl.
Yes,
That
I think I may have heard. I do believe I may have heard this song once, at least. Teach me, tiger. Oh, wah, 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 wah.
yeah.
Like that. Yes.
And then,
So what do the lyrics say? How do you believe this connects to Marilyn?
well, "Teach me, tiger, how to tease you. Tiger, tiger, I want to squeeze you." Now, I specifically think, even if that is a sexual, pretending to give pleasure type of a way, like squeeze you, you could potentially squeeze the life out of a baby cub that I specifically know Carol Baskin was not in favor of taking pictures with tiger cubs. Um, and so that's where
So
I was drawing.
it sounds to me like Marilyn is trying to squeeze these tiger cubs, trying to get perhaps photo ops with them. It's good publicity to be seen with a small cub. And Carol Baskin, perhaps psychically at the age of 1, could sense that tiger cub in a state of trauma and sick the tiger's families on Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, I mean, it could. It's a vicious backstory before you see her in, the documentary of Tiger King, but
Yes.
but I could imagine if there were someone kill Marilyn Monroe based on the way she wanted to treat tigers based on this song, it would have been Carol Baskin.
psychic baby Carol Baskin. That's very much a possibility, Stephen. Stephen, why don't you keep looking into this? When we return for Who Killed Marilyn Part 3, we'll see if you've uncovered any new evidence that might point to Carol Baskin being responsible for the murder of Marilyn Monroe.
Will do, Cliff. Anything for you, buddy.
Thank you, Stephen. Incredible possibilities tonight on Strange Times Indeed with Cliff McCallister. Of course, we are in the midst of our 4-part bi-weekly series, Who Killed Marilyn? We're currently in part 2 right now. We're looking at chapters 3 and 4 of this book. Now, in the first half of the program, we examined how Bobby and John F. Kennedy were connected to Marilyn and what possible motives they've had for murder, but we're not even halfway through our list of suspects. Now, these are quite different from the ones that Stephen shared with us earlier on, but let's get going. Suspect number 3, Arthur Miller. Now, Arthur Miller was married to Marilyn Monroe, the famed playwright. She divorces him and then quickly falls for Jack Kennedy. Now, here's the interesting thing about Arthur Miller. This pops up partway through the book. Now, perhaps Arthur Miller might not directly be involved in her murder, but perhaps his family is. Perhaps people close to Arthur Miller orchestrated the whole thing. Now, we're looking here, page 50 of the book. Let's take it back. We're at Madison Square Garden. Marilyn Monroe has just saying, "Happy birthday, Mr. President." Mr. President, very pleased. They all meet up at the party after the party, the after party. And who is there with Marilyn? Who is her date? Who is her beard that night? Why, none other than Arthur Miller's father. As she sweeps across the room with Mr. Arthur Miller's father and introduces her former father-in-law to the president. Right before she sneaks off with Jack Kennedy or John Kennedy for a more intimate celebration. Now there it is, Arthur Miller's father basically being made a cuckold at this party, right after she's made a cuckold of her own husband, her ex-husband. Could this be a family of angry cuckolds coming after Marilyn Monroe? Arthur Miller's father, Arthur Miller himself, orchestrating this. It's a sick act of revenge after she's gotten too close to the president. She takes Arthur Miller's father just as some sick game as her beard to say, "You want to meet the president? Well, you'll never guess what I'm going to do to him later." And she'll tell him all about it, because why wouldn't she? She told everyone about her relationship to John F. Kennedy. It's no secret. It was hardly a scandal back then. No one would question the president in 1962 if he was having an affair. It was just not common. It was not done. So all this happens. John F. Kennedy throws this big, lavish birthday party, a celebration of his own ego. He's only 2 years into the presidency. Perhaps a character flaw on his part. But we're going in, so that's where Arthur Miller's connection maintains. But what about Joe Dimaggio? Joe Dimaggio, one of Marilyn's friends, and also another ex-husband of hers, a scorned husband. Now watching his friend, Marilyn Monroe, get closer and closer to Bobby Kennedy, a man who Joe Dimaggio does not trust. Now at a certain point, Joe Dimaggio quits a job. He quits a $100,000 a year job as vice president of a business corporation because Marilyn told him that she was deathly afraid of someone or something. So he leaves this job for her. He leaves this job to protect her. And then he warns her. He warns her about Bobby Kennedy. Now you might think, why would he leave that job to protect her? Well, that's $100,000 a year he's missing out on. Now some of these Hollywood types, they're greedy. They need that money, and he realizes after her life isn't taken right away that, oh my gosh, well, I just lost that job. I lost that gig. And maybe that's a little motive there, potentially. But he also warns her about Bobby Kennedy. Now he says, this is from the book. Now, at this point in the book, Marilyn she's protesting. She's saying, I've only slept with John. I've only slept with John F. Kennedy, never Bobby. But from the book it says, but her denials can't be believed. What obviously happened, according to several of Marilyn's friends, is that she was trying to dispel gossip and rumors in order to appease Joe Dimaggio. See, she's still trying to make him happy, still trying to keep him smiling. What happens when Joe Dimaggio stops smiling? When he heard about her affair with Bobby, he chastised her and warned her that Bobby was a manipulator. Marilyn and Joe had a terrible row, and it troubled her. Dimaggio was one of her most valued friends, and she didn't want to lose that friendship. She wrote him a letter telling him that if she could only succeed in making him happy, she would have succeeded in the biggest and most difficult thing she could ever imagine, which was to make one person completely happy. She ended the letter saying that his happiness was her happiness. The letter was never sent to Dimaggio. It was later found in her desk, unsigned. Was it possible Dimaggio never heard these words? He lost patience with Marilyn. He snapped, he killed her. It's possible. He could have been telling her all these things about Bobby Kennedy just to make it look like Bobby did it. Maybe he wanted to get back with his girl so bad. He sows distrust for Bobby Kennedy. And he starts to make it look like if Marilyn Monroe was murdered, if she would not stop obsessing over Bobby Kennedy, then Joe Dimaggio was going to do the job and make it look like Bobby did it. A very real possibility. You know the way that men are. If you are watching Strange Times Indeed with Cliff McCallister, I'm sure you're well aware of the troubles that men can cause. Just like that, just like Joe Dimaggio snapping, going right after Marilyn. Now, here's another potential thing. Now, one of our last suspects was the family of Johnny Hyde. Johnny Hyde was Marilyn's first agent. He leaves his wife and kids to be with her. This woman considered to this family to be a homewrecker of sorts. And this family begrudges her for the rest of her life because she never even did marry this guy. She never once got together with him. She just strung him along until he died. So you'd think the Johnny Hyde family might have something against Marilyn, a little motive, perhaps. But they're not the only ones. Now, see, they don't come up directly in this chapter, but who should? But Kay Gable and Jackie Kennedy. Now, we know Jackie Kennedy threatened divorce after the Happy Birthday, Mr. President incident. After that wonderful, glorious moment, she threatens divorce. She's upset with Marilyn. She's certainly not happy. She's not impressed. But who else? But Kay Gable, wife of actor Clark Gable. Now, Clark Gable died shortly after Marilyn's divorce to Arthur Miller. And Marilyn had just worked on a film with Gable, no doubt maintaining a flirtatious element with her throughout. And Kay Gable said that it wasn't the physical exertion that caused Clark Gable's heart attack, but it was the waiting for Marilyn Monroe to finally give it up to be with Clark Gable. And it drives this man to heart attack. It drives him to death. And who knows it? Who's begrudging Marilyn Monroe for it? Kay Gable. As the wife of Johnny Hyde, Kay Gable and Jackie Onassis, did they team up to form a powerful killing squad to go after Marilyn Monroe? Now, the last and what some may consider the most far-fetched group that we are currently listing as a suspect for the death of Marilyn Monroe is the Extraterrestrials. Now, as we've covered, it's very possible that Marilyn Monroe herself was an extraterrestrial, one who is described in this book as a cosmic woman with a psychic musk. Subtle hints sewn in there to her extraterrestrial origins, that have given her heightened psychic capabilities to control the leader of the free world, to manipulate his family, to manipulate Arthur Miller into breaking a strike, to manipulate Joe Dimaggio, to manipulate everyone she's come across. Could this be an extraterrestrial power? Now, it goes on in this book to further discuss the theory very briefly, very subtly, that Marilyn might not have been of this world. When it says on page 41, We're talking about how Marilyn planned to get close to Kennedy. Here's what it says. It was certainly possible because Marilyn knew and mingled with people who were members of the Kennedy inner circle. Frank Sinatra was a former and still sometime lover, and she was close to Peter Lawford and his wife. And she knew as well as everyone else in Hollywood that, and buckle up, language warning, John F. Kennedy was a star fucker. Now that's right. Now this is the charged one, but starfucker, as we all know here in the community, the paranormal extraterrestrial community, is a term for somebody who has sex with people who aren't of this earth. Now, did Marilyn Monroe seduce John F. Kennedy by being exactly who she was? Did she show off her extraterrestrial bits? Did she give him a peek behind the curtain, so to speak? And did that get him off all the more? And he cut off that relationship with her because he knew that long term, if it was exposed that she was an extraterrestrial, why he could be accused of treason? Why, it's very possible. But here's the thing. At the end of her relationship with Bobby Kennedy, she's threatening to hold a press conference. Now, she might talk about Bobby Kennedy and the Bay of Pigs, but she could also spill the beans then about her whole thing. She could tell everyone she was an extraterrestrial. Why, that was part of the reason she may have been murdered, for going public with that information earlier than the extraterrestrials had themselves intended. But if she goes forward with that information soon enough, why, then it's just quite possible that she could get bigger roles. She could further manipulate. Why, she could be the first extraterrestrial film star. Now, that carries a lot of weight. That's something that to this day, as far as we know, has not been accomplished. The first openly extraterrestrial film star. But that could be too much for the community. That information cannot come out so soon. So the extraterrestrials have her killed as well. But let's take a look back. Because there's one other thing in this book that I'm concerned about. One other moment that raises an alarm for me, because Marilyn Monroe isn't the only person in our story who was murdered. Why, John F. Kennedy himself was murdered. And the day that Marilyn Monroe is sitting there watching his inauguration on the news, freshly divorced from Arthur Miller, thinking about a potential future with John F. Kennedy, she sits there watching his inauguration. Where is she sitting? Where is Marilyn Monroe sitting when the idea to get with John F. Kennedy crosses her mind? Where else but Dallas, Texas? The very town, the very spot, the very airport outside of which John F. Kennedy was murdered on a parade going down the street. Now, Marilyn Monroe dies before John F. Kennedy, but did she get the thought there? There in Dallas? John F. Kennedy may be my undoing, but I'll certainly be his. And she uses her psychic musk, her extraterrestrial powers to transmit out to the other extraterrestrials out there that this is a man who must be dealt with. That if something should happen to Marilyn, that his death must then be the consequence. An eye for an eye. Perhaps that is the extraterrestrial rule. Why, it's very possible. That's a very concerning thing. Now, we are reaching the end of our broadcast tonight. I want to thank everyone who tuned in. I hope you're taking notes at home. In 2 weeks, we're going to cover chapters 5 and 6. Let's see what those chapters are titled, why don't we? Just to get you hooked. And you can follow me on Strange Times Indeed on Instagram. Chapter 5 called, bluntly enough, The Murder. So we're really going to get into it. We're really going to get into it in chapter 5 and chapter 6. The cover-up. So we're getting into the dirty details of this conspiracy. You can hear me read these chapters in full on Strange Times Indeed on Instagram, at Strange Times Indeed. And you can hear my general thoughts throughout the day at Strange T Indeed on Twitter. So go ahead and follow me there. Oh my gosh, we're losing followers as we go into the plugs. Remember, this show is brought to you by the Maryland Ensemble Theater, and we dedicate each show to them for having the guts to put us on the air. I don't know any other theater in the tri-state area that would allow a show like this to go on under their headlines, to allow a guy like me to come on and speak my truth every hour, unencumbered, uncensored. These people are providing a real service, and you ought to support them at marylandensemble.org/donate. Don't forget, the Comedy Pigs will be performing tomorrow night on this very Twitch channel. They will be performing at 9 o'clock their signature short form improv. Now, one thing I do want to say for those of you still with us, we take this issue very seriously. These true crime things, real lives were taken here. Real people were talked about tonight, and we think those people deserve a certain amount of respect. And we don't talk about their deaths and their murders to get attention. We don't do it for publicity. No, nothing like that. It's all out of respect for Marilyn Monroe. You see, we love her so much, we want to find out who murdered her and where she was murdered and why she was murdered. Who did it and did she have any connections? And we do that from the deepest part of our heart, from a deep spot of respect. And so for one moment at the end of each show, at the end of each episode of this series, we would like to ask you at home, if you are still with us, get out a candle. Take out your candles, because we need to light a candle. We need to light a candle in honor of Marilyn, to know so that she knows she is not forgotten, that we are thinking of her every time we do this broadcast, that we are sending our love out to the cosmos, to Marilyn Monroe, and we are singing in our hearts a song of joy and love and respect, because Marilyn, there's no other like you. And it's time that we all light our candles, we hold them up, and we take a moment in silence to think about our dear, sweet Marilyn. A second ad on the track. Keep thinking, keep looking at your candle. Marilyn, a beautiful woman who we shall never forget. We shall always love and respect. Goodbye, Norma Jean. It's late, but we're coming to your aid. It's clear you didn't kill yourself. Look at the many plans you made. You would have held a press conference to spill the beans on JFK or your extraterrestrial lineage that gave you the talent we know today. And it seems to me you lived your life till you were murdered in your bed, never knowing who had killed you when the drugs set in. And I know we'll solve your murder before we reach the end. This 4-part series on strange times indeed. Who killed Marilyn? Being a beard is tough. Could it be that Arthur Miller's father, he got closer to you because you broke his poor son's heart? And even at the party, you celebrated Jack so intimately, but it was obvious you never thought about the First Lady. And it seems to me you lived your life till you were murdered in your bed. You knew far too much about Bobby Kennedy and the Bay of Pigs. And I know we'll solve this murder before we reach the end. This 4-part series on strange times indeed. Who killed Marilyn? Goodbye, Norma Jean. It's late, but we're coming to your aid. It's clear you didn't kill yourself. Look at the many plans you made. Goodbye, Norma Jean, the cosmic woman from outer space. Did you show Jack your alien bits? did he see your true face? And it seems to me you lived your life till you were murdered in your bed. Was it Bobby Kennedy, 'cause you two knew too much about the Bay of Pigs? And I know we'll solve your murder before we reach the end. This 4-part series on strange times indeed. Who killed Marilyn? This 4-part series on strange times indeed. Who killed Marilyn? Stay strange, terrestrials.